Where once there was only desert, where sagebrush and cactus loomed, neon and electricity now lure. A city with a history unlike any other, Las Vegas is an American tale of ingenuity and adaptation. A mecca for those who think they can beat the odds. The city has already done just that. In the series Las Vegas, you are welcome to a place of sun and sin and second chances. But few realize that Las Vegas itself is one of the biggest gambles of all time. A place where dreams become real and fate changes with the roll of a dice.
If it's not broke, don't fix it. And Vegas is not broke.
An adult playground built on little more than sand, luck, hope, and greed.
I think that people should be able to come here. They can go to the brink of legality as long as they don't fall over, and they don't have to worry about someone telling on them when they go back home.
A desert valley covered with glitz that not too long ago was covered in nothing but brutal heat. With land that provided little or nothing, Las Vegas and the state of Nevada got into the service industry, attracting people and their money by providing what they wanted but couldn't get at home.
In Las Vegas, we import the gold, and that's why the gold doesn't run out.
In the old days, it came by train. In 1905, the San Pedro, Los Angeles, and Salt Lake Railroad put a rail and repair shop in Las Vegas, Nevada. Back then, that was enough to make Las Vegas a town. The passenger depot was positioned at the end of Fremont Street, what was then the main street of Clark's Las Vegas town site. Hal Rothman is a professor of history at the University of Nevada and author of Neon Metropolis.
What you had was really a railroad town, a very typical railroad town by the standards of the day. And there towns like this are all over the American West.
Soon the town had stores, a bank, restaurants, hotels, and something else. Right from the beginning, a stop in Las Vegas offered more than the others.
The early town had one anomaly among railroad towns, and that is that it had a place where prostitution and gambling were legal. It was Block 16, and Nevada didn't have laws against prostitution at that point, and didn't have laws against gaming either. And the result was that there was an area that was specifically set aside to be the sin zone.
In 1927, the city and the railroad parted ways. Union Pacific decided to move the train repair shop 100 miles up the tracks. Without the railroad business, Las Vegas could have become a ghost town. But the town got lucky.
In 1928, the authorization to build the Hoover Dam was signed. And that was, in essence, the savior of the city. It saved people. People went down and they bathed in the Colorado River, and they poured water over each other's head. They rebaptized themselves. They were reborn as a city as a result of that.
The dam insured thousands of federal workers and millions of federal dollars. So in 1931, there were two economies in southern Nevada: the construction of the Hoover Dam and the amenities for thousands of workers that built it.
And the result was an almost constant stream of people when they got off work from Hoover Dam down what's now Boulder Highway to Fremont Street and in downtown Las Vegas, where they could get a steak, they could get a shave, they could eat a meal, they could gamble a little bit, they could do whatever they wanted to do.
In the early days, Vegas managed to dodge being Sin City by embracing its roots as a Western town, a town out of time, where a night at a casino could be considered nostalgic, a trip back to the Wild West.
Their image was very Western, and we would often find prospectors with their mules and their gold pans standing in the lobbies of those kinds of places, and there would be sawdust on the floor. And the idea was that you weren't doing something sinful, you were stepping into a past. And at that time, that was an important piece of cover, really, for gambling as an industry in Nevada.
While the Western mystique was working for Vegas, one man saw much greater possibilities.
Benny Siegel came whipping down old Highway 91 in a little red sports car, and when he hopped out of that car, he really changed Las Vegas forever.
Benny, or Bugsy Siegel, came to town. With his good looks, he had tried his hand in Hollywood, but it didn't pan out. A renowned mobster, he came to Vegas with a vision.
Instead of seeing sawdust-floored casinos with prospectors, what he saw was Monte Carlo and Havana in the desert. What he saw was a place where he could be legal where you could set up casinos and you could have high-level entertainment, and you could be chic and you could be cool and you could be classy. And that was something that no one here had ever really envisioned before.
Bugsy created a city where he was the star of the show.
Look, who would have ever dreamed that we would become the town that we are today? He's the first one to build the mega resort over the Flamingo.
Oscar Goodman was once the lawyer of choice for the mob in Vegas. In typical Vegas style, he's now the mayor.
Here we are in the desert, and he envisioned that this would be a mecca for gambling and for entertainment and for fine food.
With its legal gambling and prostitution, no legitimate money was investing in Las Vegas. But for organized crime, it was the perfect setup. From New York, Cleveland, and Chicago, mobsters came to town with their cash and their knowledge of gambling. After all, they'd been running games back home for years, outside the law.
They came in here and they said, look, we may have had an arrest back in New York or in LA for gambling, but we want to come here and we want to be legitimate. We want to participate in an industry which is legal.
A lot of the mobsters who came here said the great thing about Las Vegas was they could eat dinner in peace. They didn't have to worry about the sheriff coming and dragging them away from the dinner table on some trumped-up charge about gambling or this. Gambling was legal here. They were businessmen. They weren't criminals anymore. And that was particularly important, especially to the Jewish mobsters.
By the late 40s, Siegel's Flamingo was open and attracting people from all over the country.
Businessmen came from the East Coast and from Florida and from New Orleans and from Texas, and they came here because gambling was legal, and they came here because they could get a steak, and they came here because they could stay up all night, and they could do all these kinds of things they couldn't do at home.
It was good for Vegas, but things weren't going well for Siegel and the Flamingo. Over budget and behind schedule, Siegel had opened the casino before the hotel was finished.
When the Flamingo opened, he didn't have the hotel open yet, so he just had the casino. People stayed at other hotels. They came to the Flamingo. They gambled for a while, and then they went back to the other casinos. They tended to win money at the Flamingo and then go and lose it back at the Frontier or other places nearby. And so what Siegel had was a gambling operation that was losing money, and that doesn't happen. It doesn't happen if you know what you're doing.
With his superiors in the organization convinced he was stealing, in 1947, Bugsy Siegel was shot in the head. But the gamblers kept coming, and so did even more of those nefarious individuals with their shoeboxes full of cash, all ready to invest in the new Vegas. Soon more hotels and casinos opened, and with the casinos came the entertainers.
My naivete was that the Flamingo Hotel had to look like a big flamingo with probably the elevator going up the leg.
In 1959, at 14 years old, Wayne Newton started playing the lounges in Las Vegas. On the Strip, the marquees were filled with the biggest names in showbiz.
The old days for me meant, of course, that Dean was appearing in town, and Sammy was appearing in town, and Elvis was appearing in town, and Bobby Darin was at another theater, and Liberace was at another hotel.
Las Vegas, at its birth, really from the late 40s into the 1960s, was one of the coolest, hippest places on earth, and the best entertainers came here, and the most exciting shows were here, and the pinnacle of that was, of course, the Rat Pack.
I was driving through town nicely, and I hear this man singing one of my songs. You're out of your damn mind.
These guys are up on stage, and they're clowning with each other, and they're telling stories, and they're singing songs, and it goes on as long as you want it to. It goes on all night. They don't leave the stage sometimes till 6 or 7 in the morning. And it's this incredible moment of hip cachet in Las Vegas.
Dean, Sammy, Peter, Frank, and Joey. The martinis, the cigarettes, the broads. These guys were the embodiment of all that Vegas stood for. Joey Bishop's son, Larry Bishop.
Forget about the menu. They were thinking bigger than menus. They could have that on the menu, they could order that on the menu. They could have, and they could ship an entire, anything that they wanted.
These guys were cool and connected, taking steams at the Sands with the political star they called Chicky Baby.
Senator John Kennedy from the great state of Massachusetts.
He was in the audience in 1960, the year Chicky Baby ran for president.
You follow that, Joey. You son of a gun, you got the Jewish vote.
They were the perfect icons for Vegas, fun-loving guys who didn't play by the rules.
But Frank and Dean to me were it because they were They seemed to have a lot of fun. There were no rules or regulations where their brains, or it looked that way anyway, where their brains were concerned.
Beside the big-name headliners were the showgirls.
I was a dancer, and all the shows at that time were like on the nightclub format. They had dinner dancing and a show, and each show had a line of girls that opened the show and did a number.
Fluff LaCoe came to Vegas in 1947 as a singer and dancer.
It's not as easy as you think it is. The whole idea is to make it look easy.
The job involved elaborate costumes and new steps to learn every couple of weeks.
You came to work, you rehearsed nearly every day, and you did your shows at night, and you didn't have to work another job. You didn't even think about working another job. There weren't other jobs to work anyway.
But there was plenty of work. Hotels kept opening and each had its own line of girls. With the competition rising, it wasn't long until the showgirls, like their predecessors in Paris, went topless.
I was shocked. I mean, they'd had burlesque. The girls always wore pasties. They never, their nipples were always covered. But the Lido de Paris was the first time that they weren't.
Vegas once again had a commodity you couldn't get at home. And just as it had done before, Vegas packaged itself to comply with social mores. Here, naked breasts weren't about sin, they were just French.
All the costumes made in France, all the sets made in France. Even though they hired American people to be in the show, we all had to go to Europe to rehearse.
There was something else that didn't exist back home, something that soon became an industry all by itself. The quickie divorce, Vegas style.
When divorce was very difficult to get, you could live in Nevada for 6 months and get a divorce. When you could live somewhere else for 6 months and get a divorce, in Nevada you could get one in 8 weeks.
And then, of course, to keep your business in town, they also provided you with the quickie Vegas marriage.
It's convenient to get married here. There's no blood test, no waiting period. It's inexpensive. The courthouse is open more than not.
Cheryl Richards came to Las Vegas in the late 50s and was dealt her hand.
I didn't decide to open up a wedding chapel. I married the man that owned the wedding chapel.
She's been in the wedding business ever since, and her chapel has seen all sorts of folks, including celebrities.
Frank Sinatra, I was a part of his wedding when he married Mia Farrow. I got to arrange for the judge to come and marry him. I got to arrange all of his flowers and every part of his wedding. Of course, my favorite one is Elvis. Elvis was just wonderful. He was handsome and very beautiful. I was very honored to be a part of his marriage.
With advertising like that, it soon became the hip spot to get hitched. In the 1960s, Vegas was on a hot streak, and so was the mob thanks to a new source of money. With the help of Jimmy Hoffa, the Teamsters Central States Pension Fund is invested through the mob into Vegas. They start to build larger hotels and casinos like the Aladdin, Caesars, and Circus Circus.
So all of a sudden you have a legitimate source of capital being invested through the mob, but in Las Vegas, and it ends up reaching about $250 million worth of investment in Las Vegas in the early 1970s. So that's a lot of money in that day and age.
Then, just as Bugsy Siegel had changed the course of Vegas history in the 40s, in 1966, another man stamped his imprint on the city.
When Howard Hughes came to the community, it changed everything.
He had visited Vegas before, but in 1966, Hughes took up residence in the penthouse atop the Desert Inn. After a squabble with the owners about how he was in the high rollers suite but not gambling, he bought the place.
It was the beginning of corporate ownership. It was the beginning of a bottom line where everything had to pencil out in the black.
He was the first legitimate deep pocket to come to town, and he was considered the best businessman in the world. And if Las Vegas was good enough for the best businessman in the world, the richest man in the world, it was good enough for anybody. And so he began to remove the stigma a little bit.
Hughes demonstrated his faith in Vegas with a buying spree, collecting not just casinos but airlines, a TV station, and land, helping pave the way for other big mainstream companies.
All of a sudden, here came corporations with big bottom lines, with deep pockets, big piles of resources to invest. And all of a sudden, there wasn't enough illegal money to be able to play in that kind of game. And so mobsters sold out some of those casinos, and they felt pretty good about it because they were making money hand over fist.
the rules of the game were changing. And for the first time, the rules were being followed.
Obviously, a great many of the people who understood gaming in its embryonic stage were being moved out, and legitimacy and those kind of things were being moved in. And with that came the bean counters and the accountants.
Watching the bottom line, not taking chances. It was against everything Vegas stood for. It couldn't last long. Once Atlantic City had opened, East Coast gamblers didn't need Las Vegas. Las Vegas needed to do what it had always done: offer something you couldn't get anywhere else. This time it became an oasis of not just gambling, but almost every possible form of entertainment.
Good old crazy Las Vegas is spawning one wacky idea after another, and some are better than others.
In the 1980s, Las Vegas was transformed yet again, this time by the vision of the charismatic casino king, Steve Wynn.
I met some people that were involved in a hotel deal here in Las Vegas in 1965 and 66 where they were going to build a hotel, they were going to lease one. And, I was young and I stumbled into the group and ended up being the slot manager.
He worked hard and invested wisely, and in what was probably the biggest gamble Vegas has ever seen, borrowing more than $500 million, Steve Wynn built the fantasy-themed Mirage. With its $30 million volcano outside and Siegfried and Roy inside, it was unlike any other hotel casino in the world.
This place has become a hell of a lot more than a place to shoot crap or play slot machines.
The bar had been raised, and once again the people came to Vegas. Without shedding a tear, the city reinvented itself again, imploding the old to make room for the new.
If you go down the Strip, you could sit almost anywhere in the Strip and not see a building that wasn't there before 1990. And that's a pretty amazing feature.
Sin City was now family-friendly. With the new mega casinos came 250,000 jobs. The workers who filled them helped make Las Vegas the fastest-growing city in America. If you had lost your job in Tulsa, there was one waiting for you in Vegas.
I couldn't envision Las Vegas, for example, without our cabbies and without our waitresses and waiters. I mean, it's these people that when people come back to Las Vegas, they come back because these people were kind to them.
And in Vegas, you never know when your next customer is going to be a big tipper.
Las Vegas is a city of hope, and it sounds strange to a lot of people, but it's a very hopeful place. People don't come here because they're sad. They come here because they expect something good to happen to them. They expect to be made anew.
In the series Las Vegas, the Montecito is a mega resort casino. Fictional, but based on fact. The city of Las Vegas today has 130,000 hotel rooms and just about as many things to do in town.
Well, the choices for the people that come here are huge. The entertainment and recreation choices for a visitor to Las Vegas is enormous. And each of the hotel properties are competing for the recreational dollars.
But some things have stayed the same.
Britney Spears got married here about 5 a.m. in the morning. You know, I think she was having a good time.
Today, weddings are the second largest industry in Nevada. Here, you can get married however you want.
Well, then, by the powers vested in me, the king, I pronounce you to
In
be
Vegas, the
husband
king
and wife.
is often
Sir,
the busiest
you may
minister
kiss
in
your lovely
town.
bride.
But it doesn't stop there.
We have a hot air balloon, and it's called the Little White Chapel in the Sky. We have weddings at the drive-thru, motorcycles, pickup trucks, limousines, and they like it because it's like freedom, you know, it's like unique.
A unique kind of freedom is what Vegas has always been all about. At 81, Fluff Laco is still in the business. Today, she manages the girls in the most glamorous show in town.
Jubilee is the last really big show that's based on having a lot of girls and dancers and singers and beautiful costumes and yes, it's topless. It's the most glamorous of all the shows.
Are you hot tonight?
Wayne Newton is still playing the Stardust.
It's the only place in the world I'd ever want to live, because the people who live here, they're more like frontiersmen. They would have crossed the frontier in a covered wagon. And if they like you, they love you. And if they don't like you, leave them alone.
The city is still growing.
Yeah, this is the fastest growing city in the United States. We're a valley of 1.6 million, a city of 550,000 people. We build a new home every 20 minutes.
And if you look closely through the flashing lights and the fast growth, you still might see the shadow of Bugsy Siegel, smiling at how his gamble paid off.
I think that people still want to feel that the mob has people running up and down the street and that they're still here.
I'm proud of where we came from. I think that is what creates the mystique of Las Vegas. We have electricity, we got neon, we got glitz, we got glamour, we've got all the things that make us different, and that's why we're distinguished and distinctive, and that's why we're successful.